Hello, and welcome to a new episode of Ever Stage's Go to Master Show, Season 3, where we converse with RevOps and go to market leaders from some of the most successful companies today and learn from their unique stories. Joining us today is Hope Blaythorne, Chief of Staff and Revenue at Octopus Deploy. Hope, thanks so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you here. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself to get us started?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. And I have an interesting career on my path to being a chief of staff, which went through the revenue gamut from
Hmm.
being a sales rep to being a program director to managing the channel to being in operations to actually even moving into the early days of customer success. Back when it was more like account management, but even being at those early days of establishing customer success teams at Red Hat and at HashiCorp. So it's been an interesting journey to the office of chief of staff. But I have found all of those experiences have been so instrumental on enabling me to be able to help increase the strategic engagement and alignment of our revenue team within Octopus Deploy. So it's been very beneficial.
Bet there's always we when we talk to people, there's many different paths that get people into RevOps and sometimes paths out of RevOps. But I can't imagine having been exposed to all of this firsthand, especially the revenue side. That's one thing you can't really fake. Once you've carried a bag or had a quota, that'll mark you forever, and it's a really good thing to have in your toolbox. So what's it like? We don't talk to many chiefs of staff. Maybe talk a little bit about what their role is the day to day, what you love about it, and just paint us a picture of what would that be look like.
Absolutely. A day in the life of a chief of staff can be anything from tactical alignments, setting up board meetings, setting up interleadership meetings, alignments. It can be defining the go-to-market strategy, which is what I was brought in to do here at Octopus. It could be, literally defining the strategy and the theme for the revenue kickoff
Hmm.
and working across all the different teams to make sure it's a company-wide event versus just very revenue focused. Um, and with that, it's definitely breaking down the silos. Octopus Deploy is, based in Australia. Our product and engineering team is Australia, New Zealand based, so the time zones enough can be very siloed, create a silo effect beyond just the business unit silos. So I feel the chief of staff navigates across all of those business units, tries to drive the strategy and the priorities of the company, evangelizing the vision of what we wanna be the CD standard at Octopus Deploy, and that's my North Star when I go and I engage, does this scale? Can we measure it? And is it in alignment to our vision? So that's
That's
very much
fascinating. So, a lot of your focus is go-to-market, specifically in go-to-market strategy, more particularly. Do you find, how often does that change? Are you tweaking things period over period, or you mentioned you have a North Star? Is it very much about staying the course and finding out the best ways to achieve that? How do you view that changing environment?
good question. Um Certainly priorities change, right? And the data, that's the other measure what matters. Once we start having more data and we can understand more of what the gaps are in our go-to-market motion, for example, that's where we can start honing in on specific areas. But a chief of staff is a master of shifting, 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 but still keeping that focus and that organizational perspective of we need to keep moving forward and bringing things to fruition, right? Understanding what those priorities are and seeing to it that they not only do we have that as a focus, but we solve that problem and we bring it the project to a finalization. And with that is even pivoting it and handing it to the appropriate teams because the chief of staff doesn't really own any of these functions either.
So a lot of leading through influence, and I think just picking on something you said, getting to the outcome more than just the activity, right? It's not enough to show you're doing the work. There's a goal out there, and if you're not hitting that, then a lot of that could be wasted effort. And I'm thinking as a unsiloed view of the org, you have that vantage point that you can really um, I was going to say call people out. It's not only that they might have blind spots that you don't, right? So it's a really good place to be. Very interesting.
Yeah,
Um,
it is an interesting role. I like it because I tend to be a generalist in my life. I like to learn a little about everything, and I'm very curious. So, I think the best chiefs of staffs are generalist because I am not the marketing expert, but if I can make marketing more successful by helping organize them, keeping them on the right path in alignment to our vision, um, yeah, I'd like to help think that I escalate their success.
yeah, excellent. I see you've also worked across a wide range of companies from large enterprise, high growth SaaS. Is there something that you find consistently works across everything, or are there some tweaks you make when you're changing different playbooks for different types of companies? How do you see that?
It's interesting because I spent 10 years at IBM, which to me was like getting a MBA. And the interesting thing of my time there is I'm not the typical IBMer. The typical IBMer comes there after college, starts their career there and moves around the company and gets promoted and whatnot. And I've had my share of success there. I'll give
Hmm.
myself a pat on the back. But I never felt that I fit into that whole hierarchy model of being in such a hierarchy that when I was there, Ginny was the, CEO, and she was so many layers above me that besides meeting her at a women's luncheon event, the ability to have the impact from that perspective seems so far off that when I pivoted and went to a Red Hat and even into the HashiCorp, and I had that ability to the meritocracy aspect of an entrepreneurial smaller company really appealed to me. All voices are heard. And I really enjoyed that, where I don't feel that a larger company, and maybe it was just my experience at IBM, afforded that. So I do prefer being in that smaller entrepreneurial atmosphere and culture, because I also like the fast-paced nature of that as well.
Yeah. Well, 10 years, it's a long time. So it's a long MBA, and you probably did fit in more than you thought you did since you were able to succeed there. And yeah, you're right, there's trade offs, but you do get a lot of good things from larger, more established companies. And I think often it's not until you change that you sort of start appreciating some of the stuff you probably had. But yeah, I'm like it, and right now, at every stage, we're still a fast, rapidly growing company, but pretty small, and it's amazing to have access to the people, leadership, and just open conversations. Everything's on the table, and I love the cultural aspect of we really do practice what we preach, and I think every company puts out very lofty cultural goals out there, but sometimes it's just that or a poster or even worse, it's it's a reiterated thing that's clearly not happening. But when you can have that for real, it's pretty special.
Yep, agree.
So I want to talk about change, and it's something we see a lot in go to market, and you probably see even more than the regular go to market person on your capacity um, as chief of staff. So Um, how do you deal with change? There's fast change, short change, transition windows. Uh, how do you deal with volatility and communication?
I say don't be afraid of change because change is certain. Even at IBM, I was at this one team with an IBM cloud that was comprised of acquisitions. We just acquired the companies. So can you imagine the change management that was going on with these 27 microservices? We just kept acquiring them one after another, and they're coming into kind of a cultural shock, if you would, coming from a startup to IBM. So I think one of the things that I have learned, both in my sales career and just in my career in general, is if you don't plan for change, and even in your career, right? You're gonna be caught off guard. So, the sooner you embrace that and recognize that that could be your opportunity. I've seen times where change might not be a good opportunity for me, career-wise, but I must say when I embraced that change is gonna happen, right? And I should really just embrace it. I've seen more times than not that change has been an opportunity. And I feel as though if you look at it as that and also take that attitude because half the battle is also managing change in your teams, right? Your teams can get I remember managing a customer success team. We started out as support engineers. And the next thing you know, it's like, "Oh, let's take that hop off, and now you're a customer success manager." And there was change, but there was so much changing, adding in a new tool, adapting to the customer journey. It was an adaptation that felt every quarter it was another change. However, what I thought was a superpower during that very volatile and chaotic environment where not just customer success was changing, but the support function had to change, right? So many
Mhm.
facets of our business was changing as we scaled up. I thought the biggest superpower you can have is a good attitude. You come upon that with an optimistic attitude and confidence that what you're doing is going to make a difference and that this change, you will evolve with that and you will collaborate with others around you. And that's a big difference than the person that says, again? So I think having the right
Totally.
attitude, expecting that change is always going to be part of the equation, and also recognizing what opportunities you can find within the change.
I think that's really important. There's that ability of being curious about what's coming, having an open mind, as you say, attitude. And yeah, change is going to happen whether you're on board with it or not. Might as well be an early adopter, put a brave face. And yeah, it is what we have. I was reflecting as I was hearing you speak about change in teams. Sometimes as leaders, we have to manage change for ourselves and within our peer group, but then also within our direct reports and organizations that are reporting directly into us. And I found that there's a duality there where you can be panicking a little bit on your personal side, but you still kind of have to hold it together for the team and help them make that transition. I'm sure you have examples of that, but do you have any best practices, any ideas of how, especially for new leaders that are finding that how do you do that? What's any tips or tricks for that problem?
You know what? Include. Include your team. Talk about the change. Ask them, how should we communicate this? What do you think we should do moving forward about X? Because Uh, I think one of the interesting pieces moving from an IBM type of environment where it was a top-down hierarchy to this Red Hat open source environment is it really opened my mind to the value of everybody contributing, no matter what level you're at. So to me as a leader, it's best to have more of a servant leadership approach and say to your team, "This is what we have in front of us. This is what we're going to be looking to do. Let's talk through this." Because what I have found is when people feel like they're part of that process, then there's building trust and there's ownership in it as well. And execution will be much more higher from that perspective because they'll feel like, you know what, I participated in that. So they'll want to participate in it if they felt that they were part of that plan. So I say open sourcing your perspective of how you wanna manage that change and what that plan looks like moving forward. That way, it's their ideas that you're really cultivating, and it's their ideas that you're gonna put into action,
Yeah.
moving forward.
So honesty and maybe a bit of being okay with being somewhat vulnerable and just sharing what your perspective is. And there's a way of communicating and having sometimes difficult conversations with at the same time still being a good human being that is that first, right? Not just your boss or someone that's just reading from the company line. Good practice. Be a good person. Still works. It's good to
It
know.
still works. Yes.
Excellent. Um, uh, Obviously, we're a composition management company primarily. We don't want to waste any chance of talking to people about their perspective on comp, on sales comp. Um, how do you see it as a tool, as a hindrance? Why don't we just let's have an open thoughts about sales comp, state of sales comp, and then we'll go deeper as we go.
You know, it's interesting. I find when I first walked into my sales career, it was definitely, motivated from a financial aspect, right? Got a good commission check, and then I spent time at Oracle where literally, um, some of the bonuses were a lease for a BMW for a year, a country club membership for a year. And I was the happy recipient, or I don't know if I'd say happy, I was the recipient of a Cartier watch because I sold the first CSM uh, tool uh, way back when to a healthcare company. And when I look back on that, and I look even at that watch today, it reminded me of how much work I put into it. So, while at the time I felt like, "I got it," right? That's how "I got it, I got that BMW lease, I got that Cartier watch." After that, for the first 5 or so years, I'd look at it and I'd remember, I had to live at that account to make that work. It was the first one. You know what it's like to be the first one, right? So when you're putting in the first tool in that, large, large account, it was really, to me, it was I hate using this phrase, but I look it was like blood money. To
Mm,
me, it defined the amount of time I gave up for that. And so and it's interesting too because I have my children now, I have, some of my kids are in, obviously different generations, and that's not so important to them anymore. Having those type of, materialistic, rewards. So, we're even looking at that here at Octopus. What is meaningful to people? Because they have a good comp plan. We're looking to do bonuses on certain things that we wanna recognize good behavior, et cetera. But what does that look like? Is it a night on the town where they get to take their spouse out to dinner and it's a nice, meal and, is it time away, right? Because that's when you are trying to close deals, you spend a lot of time, in your sales role that's beyond the 9 to 5. So, we're trying to look at what that looks like because more and more people, time is valuable to them, especially their free time and being able to spend their free time with their family and with their friends. So, that's an interesting piece that we're exploring of what is important to you,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, I think it's right. It's generational to some extent, and yeah, found it fascinating that the physical, the object, the nice watch is a reminder. Like it's not always a good thing, and you speak of it as someone as a reminder of that effort that yeah got you the reward, but also it's a constant reminder of maybe what you had to give up to get that. So interesting. And obviously, people go into sales for many reasons, even if they're not primarily money motivated. you still need to make a living. It's still a responsibility as organizations and sales go-to-market teams to provide real opportunities that allow people to be successful in whatever way they define that. But I think you're right on the bonus side, on the plus, and the is it the President's Club? What is it valued? And it seems like experiences are super important now, maybe more than the gold watch, or maybe more than the trip. And I find recognition more and more. Just seeing your name up there, hearing your name spoken at the company retreat, again, continues to be something that people really care about. Um, on the tactical side of comp, besides the motivational thing, we're seeing a lot of companies go into other models of paying with consumption models or usage based. Have you seen any of this? Is that something that's happening in your industry?
Not necessarily where we are, because interestingly enough, while we were founded in 2010, we've only had a sales organization for the past 3 years. So if you think about it, all that time, it was sold through a trial demo type
Is
of,
it product-led growth?
Yes, total product led. So at this point, even though the companies, from 2010, our revenue, motion is only 3 years old. So we're not moving into that consumption. We're still kind of in a bit of the old school aspect from a comp perspective, which is why we are looking at what do we need to do to attract talent, right? Because that's another aspect of comp. If we want to attract talent to come here, especially sales reps, what should that look like so that they would be willing to come over to a company like Octopus? So that is something we are definitely looking at so that we can be toe to toe with competitors and attract the right talent, because that is a consideration to have.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's hard to distinguish yourself. Like, it's the same way it's hard maybe sometimes to distinguish your offering in a crowded market when you're trying to attract the top talent that can make a difference. You need to have something special that is, real, that you can communicate, and that is valuable out there. Yeah, and the old models, there's nothing wrong with it. It served us well for a long time, and there are some advantages on just counting licenses over more complex models. So there's, just asking because we see a lot of it,
Yeah.
especially in sort of newer or definitely AI native companies. I think where there's a hard cost associated with the usage that becomes a lot more important, um, which inevitably brings us to the AI topic. We can't have a podcast in 2025 without talking about that. So I'm curious from your vantage point, and even answer as a chief of staff or go-to-market strategist or any capacity that you feel is more interesting. But what do you see? What are you excited about for AI? What are some near-term wins you think you're going to see for revenue teams? What tools are you looking at? What would you want to invest in, etc.?
It's interesting because at the time I was at IBM, Watson was
Mhm.
being developed,
Yes.
and that was the popular department to be in.
Mhm.
Needless to say, right? Um, and I really enjoyed learning more about what the mission and vision was for IBM to even invest in it in early days. Think about that. That was like 15 years ago. So to see where it's gone today from somebody who was in the company that started it was it's just amazing. It's absolutely amazing. I use it on a day-to-day, uh, in my day-to-day. I call her my best friend, and she makes my life a lot easier. She makes my life right now, I'm, packing for a vacation house, and she's making my life easier with that.
Yeah.
Um, from every facet. So from the day-to-day of making my life easier, it's there. There's enough agents out there as well. I think when you use the various applications, like we use Gong, I like their agent. right? I find that fairly some agents I feel are just a me too, just to have the AI there because everyone knows you're gonna, it's o on everybody's, initiatives to have that functionality. We have AI cookbooks here at Octopus, so that's something we're definitely and interestingly enough, our tool makes AI better because if you have a single plane where you can have continuous deployment, it enables your, tech stack to be more effective for AI. So you have to remember AI sits here, but it's also gotta have a strong foundation as well. However, the one area that I am now extremely excited about, and this comes from my time being a customer success leader, is how we take customers through the customer journey from a customer engagement perspective. Because when I left HashiCorp, we had started what was a digital journey. Now that's different. That's where we define, okay, this is what the customer does at these points along the customer journey. And there it's pushing it out. Hi, Jose, welcome to HashiCorp. You're onboarding. These are the three things you need to do. So it was more push. But I just saw a demo the other day, and I've heard this from other CS leaders, that these agents are becoming more and more polished to actually engage with customers. I find that huge. So I can now imagine a world where instead of this being pushed out, you get the input back from the customer. You can understand what's going on because you'll have that functionality of seeing where they are in the tool. I
Mhm.
think that's incredible. I
Yeah.
absolutely think that's incredible. And here's the thing, this goes back to change because I know in some people in the customer success world, they could be like, "You traitor, you're gonna hand in a customer success manager for this." No, I'm not. Because what I feel this enables you to do, if I'm a good customer success manager, I can be more strategic because it will not replace a strategic conversation with an executive or a value based conversation with an executive. No, it will not. However, oh, I have this feature request and this support ticket issue and this, it will free up your time.
Totally.
So
Yeah.
all the time when my CS teams were all like, "We're so sick of being feature request jockeys and support, we're just a backup to support." Here's where this can elevate your role to be more strategic.
Yeah.
I see
Yeah.
that with AI agents.
100%. I think that's my expectation. If we do this right, customers should be more open to engaging with customer success, partly because it is an agent. It's low friction. It's there all the time. You can have a little window open on the side, and you're asking all sorts of dumb questions because it's a machine. It won't judge you. You'll get a lot of really good answers. And those things that percolate up to the human level are going to be those things that are actually interesting, that add value, that are strategic. So I think the predicting here, which is always a bad idea, we'll see more interaction. There's going to be more communication back and forth. 95% of it might be human to robot. Doesn't matter. You just got to get more results out of it. And yeah, and embrace change. Um, Same things we said before. Be open, learn a lot, be curious, stay relevant.
Yep,
And
and
all the
ask
things that worked
questions.
before
Ask
will
how it can
continue to
help
work.
you, right?
Yeah, excellent. This has been super insightful. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. We want to close always with a more open question about anything you would want to recommend to people in their journey, starting or halfway through. Resources, books, podcasts, anything you want that you think might be valuable for others in the journey.
Absolutely. I think if you are in a startup and you have investors, leveraging their resources can be very helpful because they've been through this before. They're helping other companies go through this journey. I think it's also a great network to find mentors because I have found that is one area finding mentors is getting harder and harder for people. today. So, and you know what? I also find giving back too, like become a mentor. Become a mentor, and really that helps you in your career, but it also helps somebody, and you never know where that person's gonna end up going. Because right now we're moving around a lot, and roles and shifting and whatnot. So mentor somebody, make a difference for them, and keep in touch with them as well. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I love that, giving back, and it's funny, I just heard what you just said, reach out to investors and even board members of the companies you work for as something that is incredibly valuable, and not just for you, it's also probably really valuable for them to have that contact from someone that's in the company on the inside. It's intimidating. I think it would have been for me years ago, starting to try to, who am I to send out an email to an investor of the company? Like, just feels so weird. But I've heard that over and over twice. And yeah, it totally makes sense. Why wouldn't you? And what a good way for them to have a direct line into the company. Not that you're going to be ratting people out or just giving them confidential information. It's just authentic experience from a company that's an investor. You're probably pretty shielded from the day to day life.
Yes.
Very cool.
And you know what? The other thing it shows is initiative, because the worst thing they'll say is, "I don't have time,"
Sure.
right? That's the worst thing they'll say, and at that point, you can say, "Anybody else you might recommend, within your firm that I could engage with?"
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Even if they can't engage, they're likely going to be, if not impressed by the reach out, at least they'll have seen your name once in a
Yep,
positive light, right? So all of that is great.
yep.
Very good. Well, thanks so much again. I really appreciate your time. And again, I think these conversations are very valuable for people. So we really appreciate you doing this.
My pleasure.
And
You.
yeah, so that brings us to the end of this insightful episode of the Go to Masters show. Big thanks to Hope for sharing her experiences and valuable insights. And remember, you can tune each every week to learn more from game changers driving hypergrowth companies across the globe. Go to Masters is brought to you by Everstage, your trusted partner for transforming the way businesses handle sales compensation. I'm Jose Aleman, signing off as your host. Thanks.